A variable is one of the ways you store data in Swift. Just like when you put your food in containers or your clothes in a drawer. In both examples, the container and the drawer are the variables. Let's take a look at some code. This is the first time you're seeing Swift code in action. Looks crazy, right? Let's break this down. First we have the var. This is the variable we've been discussing. The var is a type of box and candy bag is the name we're giving to the box. So far we have a box that's created with var. Next, it's named using camel case. Next thing we see is an equals sign and a number 10. Let's start with the 10. 10 is the amount of candies that is in the bag. That number won't change unless we got a bigger bag. In this case, the bag can contain only 10 candies. Don't worry, your candy is safe in our box. Almost there, now all we have left is the equals sign. In math, this is the equals sign. In programming, this is how we assign values. In simpler terms, the equals sign places the 10 in the box. So right now we have a variable that is called candy bag into which we have put 10 pieces of candy. There will always be 10 pieces unless we declare the variable again. Whenever we check the candy bag, it will have the 10 pieces we assigned to it. A few more examples to make sure you get it. Var books and library equals 593. In this example, there is a variable we are calling books and library and assigning it the value of 593. So we now know the library has 593 books for us to read. We better get reading soon. Here's a few more examples, but this time without numbers. In the next lesson, we'll learn types of variables, but for now, just know that we can store more than just numbers in the variables. Another example would be variables are the most simple layer of our program. They also make up a large foundation of our code. Due to this fact, they are also one of the most powerful tools at our disposal. You will see variables used over and over again. You will need to keep track of names, store numbers from calculations, or even keep the score of a game. You'll find yourself using variables nearly every minute you code. We need the computer to remember things we tell it. If we don't store the data anywhere, the computer will forget about it. So instead, we store the data in variables, which work a lot like boxes. Let's say you went out to buy some candy and bought a bag of gummies, having 10 pieces in it. You want to keep this information somewhere so when one of your friends takes some of the candies, you can keep track of what you have left. You wouldn't want any of them to sneak a candy when you weren't looking. In Swift, which is represented by the bag, the number is the data and the bag is the variable. In Swift, we put data in our variables for the same reason we put our candy inside of bags. We want to keep the candy safe somewhere and save it for later. At a candy store, they label the bags so you know what's inside them. We do this in Swift as well. Swift does all the heavy lifting on behalf of us here. You give your variables a name and the computer remembers it for us. It takes our box along with the name that we assign to it and stores it. Once the box is stored, you can retrieve the variable by simply retyping the name of it. When we want to get the data that is stored in a variable, all we need to do is to write down its name. Once we do that, Swift grabs the box and tells us what is inside. We want to get the box because we want to print out what is inside. We might also need the data for calculations or to get someone's name. In Swift, it is very important that we name our variables. This gives us some insight into what's inside the box and also helps us access the data later. Name should be written in a style called camel case. It kind of looks like a camel. Camel case is technically not required for Swift programming, but it is strongly recommended. Or maybe it is not. Either way, camel case is when you put words next to one another and after the first word, the first letters of each word are capitalized. Another example would be Hello World or the first Star Wars movie. Naming in Swift can get kind of crazy at times. You can't use spaces while declaring your variable names, and you definitely can't declare a variable name that starts with a number. Numbers at the end are okay though. For example, one variable would be wrong, but variable 1 would be just fine. Try to avoid symbols because it can get tricky with which works properly and which doesn't. It might seem weird, but you can actually name your variables with emojis. Don't actually do this though. It's just a fun little thing the developers add in. They get bored too. We either declare a variable or we initialize a variable. In the case that we declare the variable, we are basically yelling to Swift to get its attention and let it know that we have a new variable. In this case, we aren't telling Swift what's inside the variable or the box, but simply that there is a variable or a box with a name. Swift doesn't get nosy and won't look inside the box. In the other case, we will initialize a variable. Initializing a variable means that we are informing Swift that again, you have a box with a name. This time, however, we also tell Swift what is inside the box so they can store it for later. You might be wondering when you should be using declaration and when you should be initializing your variables. If you already know what is going inside the variable, then you should initialize it. If you aren't sure what is going inside the box but you're certain you'll need the variable, then you will declare it. You might be thinking that if a variable is declared with var, then maybe a constant would start with const? Nope. Apple isn't that easy on us. Instead, they use let. Wait, back up. What even is a constant? It's a variable actually. You just can't change it. Constants are immutable. Immutable means that you can't mutate or change it. With a normal variable, you can change the value whenever you want. With a constant, you will not be able to rewrite what you stored inside the variable. Remember how we had 10 pieces of candy in our candy bag? Well, let's say we took one out. We could simply write that there are 9 pieces and it works just fine. If the candy bag was a constant, you can't change it at all. A good example would be your favorite subscription like Spotify. Spotify charges me $10 every month. Hopefully it won't change. The only difference here is that there is a let instead of a var. But that's a big difference. This let indicates that the constant can never change. Let should be used as the default option. Var should only be used when you know the variable will have to change. Here are some examples. Those disturbing gas prices change all the time, so that's a variable. A constant could be a measurement. Your cup fits 200 milliliters of water, for example. In this topic, we learned about variables and constants. We also learned about the fundamentals of storing data in Swift. Further, we learned how to initialize and declare a variable. Great job! You've been doing so good so far. Keep working at it and you'll be a pro in no time at all. In the next section, we'll learn how to build our very own program.